73 to 71. Earlier today, the Italian Senate approved civil unions for LGBT couples. The bill now moves to the House of Deputies, where easy passage is expected. LGBT groups are calling the win a bitter victory, as it comes without the formal legalization of stepchild adoptions by same-sex parents. It seems that Indonesian politicians are competing for the Academy Award for Outstanding Achievement in bigoted anti-LGBT batshittery. Back in January, the first nominee, the Minister of Research, Technology and Higher Education, called for LGBT students to be outright banned from universities. Our second nominee, Minister Raya Mizard Riyakudu, this week labeled the influence of the gay community as quote-unquote a threat and said fighting it was akin to quote-unquote a kind of modern warfare. However, due to subtle originality, the award is likely to go to Arief Wismanesia, mayor of Tangerang, saying that feeding your baby canned milk and instant noodles might make them gay. This story is from the Joe My God blog. According to the mayor, nowadays parents are so busy that they often only feed their children formula and instant foods, which can have a permanent negative effect on their child's development. From this theory, he concluded that this is the reason that there are suddenly more LGBT people. Austin Burdick, an Alabama attorney, has filed a lawsuit against the 5 U.S. Supreme Court justices who voted in the majority in the same-sex marriage ruling last year. Burdick is suing the 5 justices for violations of the Fifth Amendment, breach of contract, breach of fiduciary duty, and seeks, among other things, compensatory damages, punitive damages, and mental anguish damages, and attorney fees and costs. The lawsuit seeks recovery damages exceeding $6 million. Needless to say, this lawsuit is an utter waste of time and will be tossed out on its ass. It also makes one wonder if this is a stunt to make good with social conservatives and making a bid for some kind of public office. North Carolina's largest city passed a law Monday allowing transgender people to choose public bathrooms that correspond to their gender identity, which the governor had called a threat to public safety and warned that the General Assembly may step in. The Charlotte City Council voted 7-4 to expand protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity, making it the latest frontier in a national debate on how businesses treat gay, lesbian, and transgender customers. One of the revisions to the city's non-discrimination ordinance allows people to choose restrooms corresponding to the gender with which they identify. North Carolina House Speaker Tim Moore said Thursday he's exploring a possible special legislative session to deal with the controversial provision of Charlotte's expanded non-discrimination ordinance. Whether in a special session or regular session, Moore predicted lawmakers will deal with the provision in a statewide bill that would prevent other cities from adopting similar ordinances. Good news in South Dakota, where the State Judiciary Committee yesterday morning killed a bill which would have legalized anti-LGBT discrimination by businesses. Lambada Legal celebrates, but cautions that other anti-trans bills remain active in South Dakota. Quote, HB 1008 and 1112 are hateful and unfairly target young transgender people in schools. House Bill 1008, a bill aimed specifically at hurting transgender students, is sitting on Governor Dennis Daugaard's desk right now, waiting for him to take action. He must veto this bill, and he must do it quickly because the clock is ticking, end quote. Earlier this week, the Human Rights Campaign, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and the National Center for Lesbian Rights will file a joint federal fraud complaint against a Virginia-based ex-gay torture group called People Can Change. Now, according to the complaint, People Can Change offers its services based on the false premise that being gay is a mental illness caused by a developmental disorder, an assertion debunked by major psychological and medical groups, which have rejected conversion therapy. So that's a lot of news from the big gay world, and I am Big Gay Black Dave.
You're Black Dave.
What the fuck?
That's it for the news.
He's Big Gay Black Dave.
Big Black Dave.
Jesus fucking Christ.
I'm gonna let myself get absolutely
Do you know where Saskatchewan is? Probably not. It's in Canada. If you do, you might know a city named Regina. In Regina, there's a studio. And in that studio, there are, at least once a month, a bunch of skeptical atheist geeks and goofballs who get together to do a podcast. We are the Brainstorm Crew, and we're trying to help spread a bit of reason and critical thinking while still having fun. Never taking things too seriously, but still not accepting everything we're told, we go through different topics, exploring them in depth and often disagreeing. We try to stick to provable facts, and we never trust a myth. That's why we say we're woo-free since 2013. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker under Brainstorm, or check out our website, brainstormblog.net. I can't promise you'll always agree with us, but I can promise you'll have fun listening to us.
And now, the moment you've been waiting for. Hailing from the cesspool called college with his liberal, commie, hippie, pinko, spy education, Professor Stephen attempts to spread the disease of reason, the virus of logic, while shoving a bit of science in the face of woo. Welcome to the Snake Oil Woo-Woo Science segment.
I was asked to do a little woo-woo segment on autism woo-woo. And so I did a little research. I say woo-woo, snake oil. Autism is of course, a spectrum of disorders, and it really is very, how can I put this? There's a lot of bad science associated with it. There's a lot of woo, there's a lot of snake oil. It's very susceptible to that.
Can I put my penis away?
What's that?
Can I put my penis away?
Yes, please.
I'm taking up too much of the screen, so please.
Oh my God, someone put a gag in his mouth.
Sorry, I gave my ball gag to Callie.
He already did. Corinne stuff in his mouth, so...
I've had too much whiskey, now I'm doing the snake oil segment.
Hey, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
please.
It's very susceptible to snake oil. It's very susceptible to crooks because it's a developmental disorder that doesn't show on the outside. You know, an autistic person looks exactly the same as a non-autistic person, as opposed to, say, Down syndrome, which has obvious signs even from birth that your child's going to have Downs. So a lot of people think when their kid seems to develop autism rather than was just at the point in their development that it shows up, they think, oh, well, there's a disease, there's a disorder here that needs to be fixed, as opposed to the fact that they were actually born autistic. So there's a lot of attempts at curing this as if it was a bacteria or something, as opposed to just the state they're in. A person who's autistic is autistic. There's not a cure for this. But like I
would say that part of the problem comes from them not knowing what causes it too, right?
Yes, we have no idea what causes autism. And autism is a very tricky disorder to study because not every autistic person has all the same symptoms. And sometimes they just spontaneously get better. Sometimes they get worse. Sometimes treatments work for some autistic people and not for others, and for others make them worse. So it's a very complicated and nebulous disorder. That means it's very vulnerable to snake oil salesmen selling their bullshit.
Well, yeah, but which is the one that allows them to count the toothpicks that are on the ground?
That would be the idea of the idiot savant. The idea that there's that autism means that you have like social disorders, but you're a genius at something. That does happen, but not frequently at all. It's kind of a myth almost, but it does happen once in a while.
Well, idiot savant is based off of memory, though. It's not an actual intelligence. It's a photographic memory.
I'm just saying, which one can I bring to fucking Vegas?
Oh, Rain Man.
Okay.
Yeah, that doesn't really happen. I mean, it has happened a few times. There have been a few autism is a spectrum, so there are people who are slightly autistic. They used to call it Asperger's, but I think they've gotten rid of that now. They just put them on the spectrum now. And then there are people who are very autistic. There are people who suffer from autistic spectrum disorder who don't have cognitive problems, and others who have very severe cognitive problems, like Down syndrome. Like we would say they were retarded. and others we would say they are not. And there are some who seem to be retarded except in certain things where they show a severe aptitude.
Whoa,
it's pretty rare.
Whoa. We don't use that word on the show.
Okay.
What, retard?
Retard. We don't use the word retard.
Yes, we do.
I didn't say retard. I said retarded. Retarded in their development. Held back.
We totally use the word. Don't listen to anything my husband says, ever.
But somebody's retarded. That's all I'm saying.
Chris.
I'm not going to name any names but my husband.
Sometimes autistic people actually show developmental gains or symptom improvements for no good reason, for no understandable reason that we can discern. And so sometimes whenever people claim that they've treated it or cured it or that they've shown improvements, it's just natural. It's just they do sometimes. Sometimes they get worse, sometimes they get better. Autism is a very difficult disorder to understand. And to be honest with you, in order to understand it, we're going to have to understand the human brain. And the human brain is one of the greatest mysteries to unlock in the entire universe, as far as we can tell. But there's two categories of snake oil. One is bullshit explanations as to what causes it, and then bullshit treatments for it. These things are usually locked together. The word is etiology, the cause of a disease. And what the scientists have figured out is there appears to be a genetic component. They've done experiments with twins and with families and found that, yes, there appears to be a component that's inherited. You're more likely to be autistic if you have autistic people in your family. But there also seems to be a trigger or triggers during pregnancy that means that autism actually expresses itself. So one possible trigger is pollution. So I think it behooves us all to clean up our environment just for that reason, if nothing else. Possibly some drugs are also possible triggers. We're still looking into that. We really don't know. But there's been a lot of bullshit surrounding autism since it was diagnosed.
I can talk about the pollution and the prescription drug thing. So a lot of the prescription drugs that they thought were connected to it, they found out aren't. So like Prozac,
right?
They thought was one of the ones, but there's actually no evidence for that. The only one that is still not taken out completely is the pollution.
Right. Yeah. I saw a study that said that small particulate pollution during the first 8 months of pregnancy exposure by the mother might contribute to triggering autism. Mm-hmm. So, this is all might. These are all studies that need to be redone and tested over and over again. But it appears that pollution might be a very strong contributor to it.
Mm-hmm. Let's not ignore the elephant in the room, the MMR vaccine and the vaccine movement.
Yeah.
Let's not ignore that. That's the fucking stupidest thing.
Let's not ignore the pink elephant in the room that the drunk is seeing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There is zero relationship between vaccination and autism.
That's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard.
Countries throughout the world,
so goddamn angry.
Countries throughout the world have spent millions studying that shit because somebody came up with it and has. But on the flip side of that,
was Andrew Wakefield.
Andrew Wakefield, yes. Wakefield
no longer allowed to practice in North America.
No, right? He wanted to sell his own.
Not anymore. You can't. I want to strangle that motherfucker.
Oh, he's got blood on his hands. He's got a lot of blood on his hands. He wanted to sell his own schedule of vaccines with the company he's working with. And so he had to come up with a reason to get rid of the old schedule of vaccines. And so he invented this autism connection and published a paper, and an editor at, I believe it was Nature magazine, either Nature or Science, I can't remember which one, was dumb enough to publish that paper because he thought it would be an interesting debate thing.
Exactly. The Lancet.
The Lancet, that's what it was. And
I don't pay attention to any of this stuff, I promise.
It was the Lancet.